During my time on the felony bench, one of the saddest things that I would ever see would be the effects of the sins of parents upon children. Countless times at the end of a trial, or a sentencing, I would have the child come up and make sure they understood this was not your fault. You should have no guilt feeling. This is not your fault. The most quoted book in the House and Senate during the entire history of Congress has been the Bible. And one of the things I love about it is the effort to avoid punishing children for the sins of their parents. And yet this is what this appears to do. We've already seen the results, as my friends have already indicated, of Democratic parties or policies like in New York City, Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco. They got an awful lot of bailout money. We've seen the damage that's been done, and we don't need to do more damage. We're about $29 trillion in debt. We don't have the money to be paying reparations. So if there is an award of reparations to people that were not slaves by people who had no slaves, then it will be grandchildren from now that will be punished and have to pay that price. But the truth is, at the rate that we're going, the degrading, the downgrading of our credit worthiness during the Obama administration by Standard & Poor's will start happening by others, because we will have shown ourselves to have been untrustworthy when it comes to spending. We could not control it. I've seen the documents where my great-grandfather signed when he came from Europe in 1870. I know there was horrendous wrongs done. Slavery is wrong. It's wrong for the 40 million or so that are being held in slavery right now. But if we look at the history, the Republican Party was against slavery. The Democratic Party platform of 1840, 44, 48, 52, 56 supported slavery. And in fact, the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 that required law enforcement officers to arrest potential slaves just on the word of one person is outrageous. And yet that was supported in the Democratic Party platform. The Virginia 1902 Constitution was engineered by Carter Glass, who was a U.S. representative and senator, even Secretary of Treasury under Woodrow Wilson. He exclaimed, discrimination, why, that's precisely what we propose. In 1912, Democrat President Woodrow Wilson's administration began a racial segregation policy for U.S. government employees, and that was also followed up by Democrat President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He also, according to the American Journal of Public Health, prior to his presidency, Roosevelt not only banned blacks from receiving treatment at his polio facility in Warm Springs, but he required black staff to live in a basement of the facility. In 1964, the Democratic Party led 75 calendar day filibuster against the 64 Civil Rights Act. And there were 96 House members, Democrats, that voted against it. And that goes on. And I know some say, yeah, but then the racists in the Democratic Party switched parties. One did, Strom Thurmond, but if you go back and check, there may have been 3 House members that changed parties, but the 96 House members that voted against it, the senators that voted against it and fought against it, including Robert Byrd, most of them did not change parties. They stayed in the Democratic Party. So if we're going to force this on anybody, it ought to be the one party that has done so much damage. And that's why I would submit this amendment. If we're going to punish children for the sins that even their parents didn't do, then this ought to be the way to do it. I hope that we won't compound some horrendous sins by punishing great-grandchildren of people that did wrong. And I yield back.
I look forward to taking the next couple of weeks and educating the American people about the success of the Black community. Because actually, to be honest with you, being raised by a community, a proud, entrepreneurial community that believed in meritocracy, that when they were told they could not succeed, they doubled down to prove that whoever doubted them were wrong. And to be honest with you, this concept that Black Americans have been used, abused, and discarded by white people is bothersome to me. I don't know if you guys heard what I said, but the 40s, 50s, and 60s, take this, please take this a note. And by the way, I lived during this period. So I'm not talking hypothetical. I remember these communities. I remember the pride when I didn't meet white people until I was 16 years old. I never thought of looking down on our race as hapless, hopeless, and not able to overcome. We led the country in the growth of the middle class in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Led the country in men matriculating from college in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Led the country in men committed to marriage, over 70%. By the way, that's now 70% of our men will not commit to their families. In business ownership, 40%, we're now down to 3.8%. You know how we began to succeed? We did it the good old American way. We believed in faith, family, the free market, and education, period. Now we believe in government. We have more people working for the government percentage-wise than people realizing that they can go out and build their business, their dreams. And this is what bothers me when we stand back and watch these Black communities being burned down every single year. These are men and women that said, I'm gonna take my chance, I'm gonna take a risk, I'm gonna get out there and make things happen and serve my community. And some mistake, someplace, someplace, we sit back and allow their business be burned like nothing is wrong with that. And guess what, guys? These businesses across this country, nobody's rebuilding it. The billions of dollars given to Black Lives Matter, nobody's building these businesses back, giving these people their dreams back. I'm looking forward to, by the way, reparation. When you take people's money that they've earned, it's punishment. It's theft. It's judgment. It's saying that because of your skin color, you owe me. That is not the American way. We're not racist people. This American country is based on meritocracy. And I tell you, anybody who's been in sports or military, you guys get it. At the end of the day, it's the character, it's resolve, it's the loyalty that makes the difference. The color of skin has nothing to do with how we choose those people that we want to trust and move forward with. I'll just say this as I wrap this up. I do look forward to taking the next few weeks to educate the American people about my great race. One I'm so proud to have been raised in. A race that when I left my little community, the third Black to go to the University of Miami, I went there knowing I can get a degree in biology because my parents expected of me to succeed. My community expected that of me to succeed. And whether it was my teachers, my coaches, the business owners in our community, they expected our young Black boys and girls to leave that community and make them proud, make their family's name proud, and overcome all obstacles that they were facing. It's the American way. And by the way, that's what all cultures were doing during that day. We need to get back to that. So we will find a way during this process of discussion reparation to finally educate the American people what's not being taught in our school system, that this is the greatest country in the history of mankind, and no place in our world can the Black community, Hispanic community, Asian community, and I don't care where they come from, can live the American dream like here in this country. So let's not divide us up by looking at our history and having people feel guilty for something they ever did. And I yield back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You know, history offers us an inexhaustible supply of grievances and injustices that are powerful enough to stoke hatreds and resentments that can tear any society apart. That's what this bill is all about. It is evil in its effect, if not in its intent. This is not reparations for those responsible for slavery, paid to those who were enslaved. This bill contemplates something radically different. holding people of one age responsible for the ills of another based not on their conduct, but on their race. Lincoln often pointed out that our country was born into a world where slavery was an established institution. The American founders reviled it, and they placed principles in our founding documents that they were confident would ultimately place that evil institution upon the course of ultimate extinction and would ultimately produce a republic where men and women of every race and every background could together enjoy the blessings of liberty. Equal justice under law means a colorblind society where race simply becomes irrelevant. And until recently, we had been making tremendous progress toward that vision as a nation. Now, it's true that very damaging and unwise policies have disproportionately impacted Black communities. Union-dominated schools that have utterly failed to educate the children of the inner cities. Welfare programs that have made fathers irrelevant. The withdrawal of police protection from inner city neighborhoods. These are certainly among them. But these policies devastate every community where they're practiced, and the answer is to change those policies, not to excuse them because they're ideologically pleasing to the left. This bill addresses none of these current ills. It instead attempts to set neighbor against neighbor and American against American solely on the basis of their race. You say this is healing. It is precisely the opposite. The biased composition of this commission lays its intent bare for all to see. It's designed to reach into the dead past, revive its conflicts, and then reintroduce them into our age. I think all Americans of goodwill, regardless of their race, have had enough of this nonsense. So please stop. It's tearing our country apart. I yield back.
Let me set the record straight. I've been hearing this about the GI Bill for quite a while. Let me kind of make sure everybody, and by the way, all I have to do is look it up. Guys, you can look this up. My dad came back from World War II. Growing up in Texas, he could not get a postgraduate degree. He graduated from Purdue, but because of Jim Crow laws, I ran across a box of letters after he passed away, rejection letters from across this country that would not accept him. And I knew it was because of his color, because he was a very, very smart guy at that time. But you know, they used that as motivation when people said they couldn't. So what he did is use this GI Bill to go to Ohio State, where he got his PhD in agronomy. His brother used his GI Bill to get his PhD in economics. My mother's 6 brothers got their GI Bill, college taken care of, and they all became part of the middle class. I lived in Liberia, Africa, 5 years old, during the days of segregation, because my dad was doing research in Liberia, Africa. I had an uncle that was an engineer, an older uncle, engineer, decided he was going to start a second business. So he bought a plane in 1960-61 and took mail from Wichita Falls, Texas to Chicago. Now, I don't know how many people you guys know, how many white people you know that had bought planes, and it wasn't that it was rich, he just had a dream. And my first flight, around 10 or 12 years old, was because he flew to Tallahassee and took me up in that little single-engine plane. So I think we need to learn our history, my friends. No, we took advantage of the GI Bill, and we became the fastest-growing middle class because we came back, built our homes, built our communities, had our kids going to college, graduating with big dreams. Well, I'll tell you one thing for sure. I'm going to wrap up with this. What a difference in messaging when I was growing up and now. For my parents to tell their kids they could not succeed because of white people would never have happened. I mean, seriously, they would be so disappointed in the messaging we're giving our kids. Because no, they were not getting the fairest treatment. But boy, they were so proud of who they were going to make sure that they commanded respect by doing everything you had to do to overcome any races. By the way, one last thought. I got my degree in biology at the University of Miami. You know what drove me? My senior year in high school, this white guy said I couldn't do it. You know what that did to me? 4 years I lived in that library in the University of Miami, lived there, because I was going to make sure that guy was so wrong. That was the commitment. That was the way my race was taught. We need to get back to that. Let's stop telling our kids they can't succeed. What examples are we to tell our kids, I can do it, but you can't? Instead, let's tell them this. It's tough. You're going to fail. Everybody's not going to believe in you. Some people might not like you, but you can do this. You live in the greatest country in the history of mankind. If you go out there and you run harder, you work harder, you study harder, you can succeed in this country and make good things happen. I yield back.
Would the gentleman yield?
Who's that?
Reclaiming my time, I yield to my friend from Texas.
Well, I would just simply like to ask my friend from Utah a question, because earlier he had said that, and had observed the change and the flip in families in the black family unit and divorce rates, going from the most married with fathers at home to now inverted. That is not the case. Does my friend from Utah have thoughts and a view on what transpired that caused that, and that
Absolutely.
what resulted in that?
Absolutely. It's called policies. Policies. The last 4 years, the policies put in place by the Trump administration had the lowest unemployment in the history of our country for blacks, Hispanics, Asian men, women, and veterans. We had over 400% increase in black business ownership. Policies makes a difference. And I'm going to tell you this, I've seen what happened to my community, the great community I grew up in, and look back and see what's going on now. It's policies that's doing it. And you go to every single place where there's misery in our communities. It's because of college policies in which our kids are not being taught how to read and write. They're not taught, the family unit's been turned upside down. They're not telling our young men to respect, to love God, country, family, respect women and authority. That's what I was taught. We get our kids thinking that way again. Our men will man up, take care of their families, and families move forward. And that's actually how we become a very successful community. Our families have to get back together again. And policies that destroy the family unit, destroy a free market, destroy our opportunity to have our faith in our God, those policies will destroy our culture, and we can't allow that to happen.